The final week at the Galactic Military Academy had arrived, and Jake Morrison stood at the threshold of making history. The Academy's graduation examinations were legendary throughout the galaxy, designed to test every skill a military officer would need in real combat situations. The examination was called the Gauntlet, and it consisted of 7 individual combat scenarios against the Academy's most skilled opponents. Each fight would test different aspects of military knowledge, strategy, tactics, adaptability, leadership, and pure combat skill. The cadets would face opponents chosen specifically to challenge their weaknesses. Jake stood in the preparation chamber with the other top 10 cadets in his class. Around him were the elite of the elite, Zork's Battleclaw, whose strength had made him famous throughout the Academy; Nix Mindrender, whose psychic abilities had never been defeated; Zara Swiftwind, whose speed was legendary even among her own; Species, and 6 others who represented the best warriors their species could produce. "Today we find out who the real warriors are," Zork said, his voice filled with confidence. Despite his defeat by Jake during the Crucible, he had continued to improve and was still considered one of the most dangerous fighters in the Academy. Jake checked his equipment one final time. He still carried the same basic human gear he had brought from Earth 6 months ago. While the other cadets had access to advanced alien technology, Jake had learned to make his simple equipment work in ways that surprised everyone. The first combat scenario was announced. Jake would face Zork's Battleclaw in a one-on-one fight in a standard combat arena. The match would last until one fighter was unable to continue or surrendered. The arena was packed with cadets and instructors who had come to watch the impossible, a human fighting a Crethan warrior in single combat. Most expected the fight to be over quickly, with Jake's larger opponent overwhelming him through superior strength and armor. Commander Vex watched from the instructor's observation deck, his feelings mixed between hope and dread. Part of him still wanted Jake to fail, to prove that the human success had been a fluke. But another part of him had begun to respect the young human's determination and skill. The fight began with Zork's charging forward, his massive frame moving with surprising speed. His 4 arms carried weapons designed to take advantage of Crethan's strength and reach. Against any normal opponent, the battle would have been over in seconds. But Jake was no longer the confused, overwhelmed human who had arrived at the Academy 6 months earlier. He had studied Zork's fighting style for months, learning every pattern, every preference, every weakness. As Zork's attacked, Jake was already moving, using the arena's environment to his advantage. The fight lasted 23 minutes. Jake could not match Zork's strength, but he had learned something that his opponent never understood: how to turn strength into a weakness. He used Zork's own momentum against him, led him into positions where his size became a disadvantage, and gradually wore down the larger fighter through superior endurance and tactical thinking. When Zork's finally collapsed from exhaustion, the arena fell silent. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. A human had defeated one of the Academy's most powerful warriors through pure skill and intelligence. "How?" Zork gasped as Jake helped him to his feet. "I am stronger, better armed, more experienced. How did you defeat me?" Jake smiled with quiet respect for his fallen opponent. "You fought like a Crethan. I fought like a human. Sometimes that makes all the difference." The second scenario pitted Jake against Nix Mindrender in a test of mental combat. The Valdari psychic was known for her ability to read opponents' minds and predict their actions before they made them. She had never been defeated in mental combat, but Jake had prepared for this challenge too. He had studied human meditation techniques and mental disciplines that were unknown to galactic science. While Nix tried to read his mind, Jake used emotional chaos and instinctive responses that could not be predicted or calculated. The mental battle lasted an hour, with Jake using techniques borrowed from human martial arts and meditation practices. When Nyx finally admitted defeat, she stared at Jake with new understanding. "Your mind works differently than any other species," she said. "You think with emotion and instinct as much as logic. It makes you impossible to predict." The third scenario was a speed and agility test against a Zephyrian fighter. The fourth was a tactical command simulation, where Jake had to lead a mixed species. Force against superior numbers. The fifth was a survival scenario in a hostile environment. Each test was designed to challenge Jake in areas where humans were supposed to be inferior. Jake passed every test, not through superior physical abilities, but through the application of uniquely human approaches to each challenge. He used psychology against the speed fighter, creating a confined space where speed became a liability. He led the diverse force by understanding each species' motivations and fears. He survived the hostile environment by using knowledge and adaptability rather than natural resistance. By the sixth scenario, word had spread throughout the Academy and beyond. Military leaders from across the galaxy were watching the examinations, trying to understand how a primitive human was defeating the galaxy's elite warriors. The sixth opponent was Professor Drac himself, the Academy's chief combat instructor. Drac was a veteran of dozens of galactic conflicts, with centuries of experience and access to the most advanced military technology available. "I have watched your progress for months," Drac said as they prepared to fight. "You have shown me things about warfare that I never imagined. Now I want to test your skills against a true master." The battle between Jake and Professor Drac became legendary in Academy history. It lasted an hour and 15 minutes, with Jake demonstrating every skill he had learned during his time at the Academy. He used environmental tactics, psychological warfare, and pure human stubbornness to match an opponent who should have been able to defeat him easily. When Professor Drac finally acknowledged defeat, the watching crowd erupted in amazement. Jake had just defeated one of the galaxy's most skilled warriors, using nothing but human tactics and determination. "You fight like no one I have ever encountered," Drac said with deep respect. "You have shown me that there are aspects of warfare that we have never explored. Your species has much to teach the galaxy." The seventh and final scenario was the ultimate test. Jake would face Commander Vex himself in full combat gear. Vex was not just an instructor. He was a legendary warrior who had helped establish the Academy's reputation for excellence. As they faced each other in the arena, Vex spoke quietly so only Jake could hear. "You were supposed to be a joke, a primitive human who would fail quickly and remind everyone why some species are warriors and others are farmers. Instead, you have become something none of us expected." Jake nodded respectfully. "I know why you admitted me, Commander, but I am grateful for the chance to prove what humans can achieve." The final battle was the longest and most intense of all. Vex used every advantage available to him: superior technology, centuries of experience, and the natural physical advantages of his species. But Jake had learned something during his time at the Academy that even Vex had not understood. Humans had learned to fight by being the weakest species on their planet. Every victory they achieved had come through intelligence, adaptability, and an almost supernatural refusal to give up. These qualities had allowed them to dominate Earth, and they were now allowing Jake to compete with the galaxy's elite. The battle lasted nearly 2 hours, with both fighters pushed to their absolute limits. In the end, Jake achieved victory not through superior strength or technology, but through the quintessentially human ability to find a way to win when winning should have been impossible. When Commander Vex finally acknowledged defeat, the Academy fell silent. The impossible had happened. A human had just achieved the highest combat scores in the Academy's 300-year history. At the graduation ceremony, Jake Morrison stood at the top of his class. His final scores were not just the highest in his year, they were the highest ever recorded at the Galactic Military Academy. The primitive human who had been admitted as a joke had become the standard by which all future cadets would be measured. As Jake received his commission as a lieutenant. In the Galactic Defense Corps, representatives from military organizations across the galaxy approached him with offers and opportunities. The galaxy had suddenly realized that humanity might have more to offer than anyone had imagined. Commander Vex approached Jake after the ceremony, his expression a mixture of respect and amazement. "Morrison, I have to ask, how did you do it? How did a primitive human surpass warriors from species that have been fighting galactic wars for thousands of years?" Jake thought carefully before answering. "You made one mistake, Commander. You assumed that being physically superior made you better warriors. But humans learned to fight by being the weakest species on our planet. We did not survive by being strong. We survived by being smart, adaptable, and too stubborn to quit." He looked up at the stars that would soon become his battlefield. "You taught me to fight like a warrior, but I learned to fight like a human. And in the end, that made all the difference." As Jake prepared to leave the academy and begin his career in the Galactic Defense Corps, the morning started like any other Tuesday in New York City. People rushed to work, coffee shops filled with customers, and traffic moved in its usual slow crawl. Then the sky went dark. Jake Morrison was drinking his third cup of coffee in the Navy Command Center when the alarm started screaming. Every radar screen in the room showed the same impossible thing: massive objects appearing over major cities around the world. The ships were huge, each one the size of Manhattan, floating silently above the earth like sleeping giants. "Sir, we're getting reports from London, Tokyo, Moscow, and every major city," said Lieutenant Ben Cross, his voice tight with tension. "The objects just appeared. No warning, no sound, nothing." Jake set down his coffee cup and stared at the main screen. The alien ship over Washington looked like a crystal cathedral made of silver and light, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Any response to our communications?" Jake asked. "Nothing yet, sir. They're not responding to any frequency we've tried." Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the ship spoke. Not through radio or any technology humans understood, but directly into every television, phone, and computer on Earth. The voice was calm, almost gentle, speaking perfect English and every other language at once. "People of Earth," the voice sighed, "I am Ambassador Zeeth Kara of the Valonian Empire, speaking for the Galactic Council. Do not be afraid. We come in peace." Jake felt his heart skip. First contact. Humanity's first meeting with aliens, and it was happening on live television for the entire world to see. The voice continued. "Your world has been selected for protection under the Galactic Protection Accords. Your species shows promise, but you are young and face dangers you cannot yet understand. We are here to help." Dr. Lisa Parker rushed into the command center, her lab coat still on and her hair messy from running. She was Earth's top expert on biology and had been called in the moment the ships appeared. "Are you getting this?" she asked, pointing at the screen. "Every word," Jake replied. "What do you think?" Lisa frowned. "Something feels wrong. The way he talks, the words he uses. It's like he's reading from a script." On the screen, the alien continued speaking. "In 3 days, we will send representatives to meet with your leaders. We will explain the protection we offer and what it means for your future. Until then, please remain calm and continue your daily lives." The transmission ended, leaving the world in stunned silence. Over the next 3 days, the world went crazy. Some people celebrated, thinking humanity had finally made contact with friendly aliens. Others panicked, afraid of invasion. Governments held emergency meetings, Religious leaders debated what it meant, and scientists worked around the clock to understand the alien technology. Jake was chosen to lead the human delegation. He was young for a captain, only 35, but he had a reputation for staying calm under pressure and asking the right questions. Lisa would come as the science advisor, along with Admiral Kate Sullivan, who commanded the Pacific Fleet. The meeting was set for a neutral location, a small island in the Pacific Ocean. The aliens built a temporary structure there overnight, a gleaming white building that seemed to grow from the ground itself. When Jake first saw Ambassador Zithkara, he was surprised. The alien looked almost human, except for his pale blue skin and large black eyes. He was tall and thin, wearing robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. But what struck Jake most was how nervous the alien seemed. "Welcome, humans," Zithkara said, his voice carrying the same calm tone as the global broadcast. "I am honored to meet representatives of your species." "Thank you for coming," Jake replied. "We have many questions about this protection you mentioned." The alien's large eyes blinked slowly. "Of course. Questions are natural for young species. Please sit, and I will explain." The meeting room was beautiful, but strange. The walls seemed to be made of living light, and the furniture adjusted itself to fit human bodies. Other aliens stood around the room, all looking similar to Zethkara, but with different colored skin and clothing. "The galaxy is vast and dangerous," Zethkara began. "There are forces at work that young civilizations cannot understand or fight. The Galactic Council exists to protect newer species from these threats." Admiral Sullivan leaned forward. "What kind of threats?" The alien paused, and Jake noticed something odd. Zethkara's hands were shaking slightly, and he kept glancing at the other aliens as if asking for help. "Ancient evils," the ambassador said finally. "Cosmic predators that hunt young worlds. Forces of darkness that have existed since the beginning of time." Lisa frowned. "Can you be more specific? What do these threats look like? How do they attack?" Another pause. Longer this time. "The details are complex. Your species is not yet ready to understand the full scope of the dangers you face." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong here. The alien was avoiding direct answers, speaking in vague terms that didn't really explain anything. "We're willing to learn," Jake said carefully. "Humans are curious by nature. We want to understand what we're up against." Zethkara's nervousness became more obvious. His hands moved restlessly, and he kept looking at his fellow aliens. "Understanding comes with time. First, you must accept our protection. We will build orbital stations around your world. Our ships will patrol your system. Our technology will shield you from harm." "And in return?" Admiral Sullivan asked. "Simple cooperation. You will limit your space exploration to approved areas. You will not develop certain types of weapons. You will not attempt contact with other species without our permission. These restrictions exist for your own safety." The room fell silent. Jake looked at Lisa, who was staring at the alien with growing suspicion. Admiral Sullivan's face was stone cold. "Let me make sure I understand," Jake said slowly. "You want to protect us from threats you won't describe, using methods you won't explain, in exchange for giving up our freedom to explore and defend ourselves." The alien's blue skin seemed to grow paler. "It is not about freedom. It is about survival. Every species that has refused our protection has faced consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Lisa asked sharply. "They are no longer with us," Zethkara said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake felt his heart racing. This wasn't protection. It was a threat disguised as help. Admiral Sullivan stood up slowly. "Ambassador, I have a simple question for you." The alien looked up at her, his large eyes wide with something that looked like fear. You say you want to protect Earth from dangerous threats, she continued. My question is this. Protect us from what, exactly? Zethkara's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The other aliens shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke for a long moment. That is. The threats are ancient and complex, the ambassador stammered. Young species cannot comprehend. Try us, Jake said firmly. We're not as young or as stupid as you seem to think. The alien looked around the room desperately, as if searching for an escape route. His confident demeanor had completely disappeared, replaced by obvious panic. The protection system has worked for thousands of years, Zethkara said finally. Every species that has accepted our guidance has survived and prospered. That's not what I asked, Admiral Sullivan said. I asked what you're protecting us from. The alien ambassador looked at his companions, then back at the humans. For the first time since the meeting began, he had no answer. Jake realized in that moment that humanity had just asked the most dangerous question in the galaxy, and the alien's inability to answer it told him everything he needed to know. Something was very wrong with this protection offer, and Jake Morrison was determined to find out what. The next morning, Jake Morrison sat in the Pentagon with a headache that felt like it might split his skull in two. The meeting with Ambassador Zethkara had ended badly. The alien had stumbled through more vague explanations about cosmic threats and ancient evils, but he never gave a straight answer about what exactly Earth needed protection from. He's hiding something, Lisa Parker said, pacing around the conference room. Did you see how he reacted when we asked direct questions? He looked terrified. Admiral Sullivan nodded grimly. In my experience, people who can't explain why they're helping you usually aren't. Jake stared at the files spread across the table. Photos of the alien ships, transcripts of the meeting, and reports from around the world. Every government was asking the same questions, and nobody had answers. What do we know about their technology? Jake asked. Dr. Sam Rodriguez, the military's top analyst, opened his laptop. That's what worries me most. We've been studying their ships for 3 days now. All their equipment seems designed for hiding, not fighting. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Look at this, Sam said, pointing to his screen. Their ships have advanced stealth systems, energy shields, and cloaking devices. But their weapons are weak, really weak. These aren't warships. They're built to run and hide. Jake frowned. That doesn't make sense. If they're protecting the galaxy from ancient threats, shouldn't they have powerful weapons? Exactly, Sam replied. And there's something else. We intercepted some of their communications yesterday. They're not talking like protectors. They're talking like prison guards. The room fell silent. Jake felt that chill again, the same one he'd felt when the alien couldn't answer Admiral Sullivan's question. Show me, Jake said. Sam played a recording. The voices were translated by computer, but the meaning was clear. The aliens weren't discussing threats to Earth. They were discussing how to keep humans contained, how to monitor their activities, and how to prevent them from exploring certain areas of space. They're not here to protect us, Lisa said quietly. They're here to control us. Admiral Sullivan stood up. We need more information. I want to know everything about these so-called protectors. Over the next week, Jake worked with a team of scientists and military experts to learn everything they could about the Galactic Council. What they found made the situation even more confusing. Professor Nina Collins, a historian from Harvard, had been studying the aliens' cultural records. Every species in the Council has the same story, she reported. They were all protected by older civilizations. It goes back thousands of years. Protected from what? Jake asked. That's the problem, Nina said. Nobody knows. Each species was told about threats by their protectors, but none of them have ever actually seen these threats themselves. Lieutenant Ben Cross had been working with the computer experts to analyze alien databases. Sir, I found something strange. The Council keeps very detailed records of every species they've contacted, but there are huge gaps in their history. What kind of gaps? Jake asked. Entire civilizations that just disappear from the records. Advanced species that were developing faster than the Council liked. One day they're there, the next day they're gone. Jake felt his blood run cold. Gone how? The records just say. They fell to the ancient threats, Ben replied. But there are no details about what happened or how they were defeated. The pieces were starting to come together, and Jake didn't like the picture they formed. The Council wasn't protecting anyone. They were eliminating competition. Meanwhile, the aliens were getting impatient. Zeth Kara had been sending messages every day, asking for Earth's decision about the protection offer. His tone was getting less friendly and more demanding. Your delay is concerning, the ambassador said during their latest communication. Other species have accepted our protection much faster. Hesitation can be ... dangerous. Jake looked at the alien's image on the screen. We need more information about these threats before we can make a decision. I have told you everything. Your species needs to know, Zeth Kara replied. The threats are real, and they are coming. Without our protection, Earth will not survive. Then show us proof, Admiral Sullivan said, stepping into view. Show us evidence of these threats. Show us what happened to the species that refused your protection. The alien's face went pale. Such knowledge is restricted. Your species is not ready to understand the full scope of the dangers. Try us, Jake said firmly. Zeth Karai's image flickered, and for a moment he looked genuinely afraid. Captain Morrison, you do not understand the forces at work here. Some knowledge is too dangerous to share. More dangerous than being attacked by these mysterious threats? Lisa asked. The alien had no answer for that dot after the communication ended. Jake called an emergency meeting with his team. The evidence was piling up, and none of it was good. They're lying, Sam said bluntly. Every piece of data we've gathered points to the same conclusion. The Council isn't protecting anyone. They're running a protection racket. What do you mean? Jake asked. Think about it, Sam continued. They show up, claim they are dangerous. Threats offer protection in exchange for control, and then eliminate anyone who refuses. It's the oldest scam in the book, just on a galactic scale. Professor Collins nodded. The historical pattern supports that theory. Every time a species got too advanced or too curious, they mysteriously fell to these ancient threats. But the Council always survived. So what are we dealing with? Jake asked. The threats they're warning us about, Lisa said slowly, are them. The Council is the danger. They've been eliminating advanced civilizations for thousands of years to stay. In power, Jake felt the weight of the revelation settle on his shoulders. Humanity had asked a simple question. Protect us from what? And the answer was becoming terrifyingly clear. We need proof, he said. We need evidence that we can show the world. Ben looked up from his computer. I might have something. During the last communication, I managed to access some restricted Council files. They have detailed records of something called enforcement actions. What kind of enforcement actions? Admiral Sullivan asked. Military strikes against species that refused protection. They have entire fleets hidden in the areas they've declared off-limits to younger civilizations. Jake stared at the data on Ben's screen. Fleet positions, weapon, specifications, and target lists. It was all there, hidden in the Council's own records. They're not protectors, he said quietly. They're predators. The room fell silent as the full implications sank in. The Galactic Council had been running the largest protection racket in history, using fear and violence to control entire civilizations. What do we do now? Lisa asked. Jake looked around the room at his team. These were good people, smart people, and they all understood what they were facing. The aliens weren't offering protection. They were offering slavery with a smile. We do what humans do best, Jake said. We ask more questions. Admiral Sullivan smiled grimly. And if they don't like our questions, then we'll know for sure that we're right, Jake replied. Because protectors don't get angry when the people they're protecting won't understand the threats. The next morning, Jake sent a message to Ambassador Zethkara. It was simple and direct, just the way humans liked their communications. Ambassador, we've been studying your protection offer, and we have some concerns. We'd like to see evidence of these ancient threats you mentioned. We'd also like to understand why previous species that refused your protection all seemed to disappear. Can you provide this information? The alien's response came back within an hour, and it was very different from his previous messages. Gone, was the calm, reasonable tone. Instead, Zethkara sounded angry and desperate. Captain Morrison, you are asking about matters beyond your understanding. These questions are dangerous and inappropriate. You must accept our protection immediately, or Earth will face the same fate as other uncooperative species. Jake read the message twice, then smiled. The alien had just confirmed everything they suspected. The threat was real, but it wasn't. Some ancient cosmic evil. The threat was standing right in front of them, wearing the mask of a protector. Got you, Jake said quietly. Commander Alex Turner had always been good at breaking rules. That's why Jake Morrison chose him to lead the secret mission into the forbidden zones of space. If the Galactic Council was hiding something in the areas they claimed were too dangerous. For young species, Alex was the perfect person to find it. Remember, this mission doesn't exist, Jake told Alex as they prepared to launch. If something goes wrong, we can't help you. Alex grinned. Understood, sir. We'll be ghosts. The ship was small and fast, built with the best stealth technology. Earth could manage. Dr. Rachel Stone, the team's archaeologist, had packed every scanning device they could fit. If there were ruins or evidence in the forbidden zones, she would find them. The Council ships patrol these areas regularly, Van Cross reported from the command center. But we found gaps in their coverage. You'll have small windows to explore. Alex nodded. How long? Maybe 6 hours at each location before they notice you're there. That's not much time, Rachel said. It's what we have, Alex replied. Let's make it count. The first forbidden zone was 3 light years from Earth, System the Council claimed was haunted by ancient horrors. What Alex found there was very different from what he expected. My God, Rachel whispered as they approached the third planet. Look at this. The planet was covered in ruins. Massive cities that had once housed millions of people, now silent. And empty. But these weren't the remains of some cosmic battle. They were archaeological sites, carefully preserved and studied. Someone's been here, Alex said, studying the scans. Recently, they landed near what looked like a research station. The buildings were clearly alien, but not Council technology. These were different, more advanced, and they had been abandoned. In a hurry, Rachel ran her scanners over everything they could find. These ruins are ancient, but they're not from some destroyed civilization. They're from a species that was incredibly advanced, more advanced than the Council. What happened to them? Alex asked. That's what I want to know, Rachel replied. Collecting samples. But look at these research notes. Whoever was studying this site was asking the same questions we are. Alex found a computer terminal that was still working. The language was alien, but the translation software gave him the basic meaning. What he read made his blood run cold. Rachel, you need to see this, he said. The files were research notes from a species called the Althurians. They had been studying the ruins for decades, trying to understand what had happened to the original builders. But their research had been cut short when the Council declared the system a forbidden zone. They were pulled out overnight, Rachel said, reading over Alex's shoulder. No explanation, no warning, just gone. And a year later, the Altharians mysteriously fell to the ancient threats. Alex added grimly that they spent the next 4 hours documenting everything they could find. The evidence was overwhelming. The ruins belonged to a civilization that had been far more advanced than the current Council. They had built ships that could travel between galaxies, weapons that could destroy stars, and technology that made the Council's equipment look like stone tools. So what happened to them? Alex asked. Rachel pointed to a section of the ruins that had been carefully excavated. Look at this. These aren't battle scars. This is archaeological work. Someone was studying these people, learning from them. Learning. What? How to defeat them? The implications hit Alex like a physical blow. The Council hadn't found these ruins by accident. They had been studying them, learning from civilizations that were more advanced than they were. And when they learned enough, they had eliminated the competition. We need to get this information back to Earth, Alex said. But as they prepared to leave, Rachel made one more discovery. Hidden in the deepest part of the ruins was a message, carved in stone and translated into hundreds of languages. Beware the protectors, it read. They come with promises of safety, but they bring only chains. The greatest threat to young civilizations is not the darkness between stars, but those who claim to guard against it. Alex photographed the message and sent it back to Earth immediately. This was proof that other species had figured out the truth about the Council. Meanwhile, Agent Maria Santos was working her own investigation from inside the Council's intelligence division. Getting assigned to the alien fleet had been difficult, but her cover as a xenobiology student was holding up. The Council's ship was massive, but Maria quickly noticed something odd. Most of the crew seemed terrified of their own superiors. They whispered in corners, avoided eye contact with ranking officers, and jumped at every sudden sound. They're not acting like protectors, Maria reported during her secret communication with Earth. They're acting like prisoners. She had managed to access some of the Council's historical records, and what she found confirmed humanity's worst fears. The protection system was a lie. The Council had been eliminating advanced civilizations for thousands of years, always claiming they had fallen to mysterious threats. I found records of 37 different species that were destroyed over the past millennium, Maria reported. All of them had one thing in common. They were becoming too advanced for the Council to control. What about the threats they keep mentioning? Jake asked. That's the scary part, Maria replied. The threats are real, but they're not ancient cosmic evils. They're the Council's own enforcement fleets. Maria had discovered that the Council maintained massive military forces in the forbidden zones. Ships designed not for protection, but for elimination. When a species refused the Council's protection or became too advanced, these fleets would attack and destroy them completely. They stage it to look like the species was attacked by the ancient threats, Maria explained. But it's really just the Council cleaning house. Back on Earth, engineer Rick Davis was working on a different kind of investigation. He had been studying the Council's technology, trying to understand how it really worked. This is brilliant, Rick told his team. Evil, but brilliant. The defensive systems the Council had offered to install around Earth weren't designed to keep threats out. They were designed to keep humans in. The orbital stations would monitor every ship that left Earth, and the energy shields could be turned inward to trap humanity on their own planet. It's a prison system, Rick said. They're not offering to protect us. They're offering to cage us. His team had found hidden programming in the Council's technology. If humans ever became too advanced or too curious, the protection systems would activate and turn Earth into a prison planet. We need to tell the world about this, Rick said, But Jake had one more investigation to complete. General Henry Brooks had been secretly communicating with other species that were under Council protection. What he found was heartbreaking. There are dozens of civilizations that have figured out the truth, Henry reported, but they're all trapped. The Council has them locked in their own systems, unable to communicate with each other or explore beyond their borders. Some of these species had been under Council protection for centuries. They had become completely dependent on their protectors, unable to defend themselves or think for themselves. Others had tried to rebel, only to face the Council's enforcement fleets. There's a group of species that call themselves the Resistance, Henry said. They've been trying to warn younger civilizations about the Council for years. But most species are too afraid to listen. The Resistance had been watching humanity's first contact with the Council, hoping that humans would be different. They had seen how humans asked direct questions and refused to accept vague answers. They think we might be the first species strong, enough to stand up to the Council, Henry said. Are we? Jake asked. Henry smiled grimly. We're about to find out. All the investigations were pointing to the same conclusion. The Galactic Council wasn't protecting anyone. They were running the largest protection racket in galactic history, using fear and violence to control entire civilizations. The ancient threats they warned about were real, but they weren't cosmic evils or mysterious predators. They were the Council's own enforcement fleets, designed to eliminate any species that became too advanced or too curious. Jake gathered all the evidence and prepared to present it to the world. Photos from the Forbidden Zones, recordings from inside the Council, ships, analysis of their technology, and testimonies from other species. It was all there. We know the truth now, Jake told his team. The question is, what do we do with it? Lisa Parker had been quiet during the briefing, but now she spoke up. We do what humans have always done when faced with bullies. We stand up to them, even if it means fighting the most powerful military force in the galaxy? Admiral Sullivan asked. Especially then, Lisa replied. Because if we don't, who will? Jake looked around the room at his team. They had all risked their lives to uncover the truth. Now they were asking him to risk all of humanity to act on it. The Council is expecting our answer tomorrow, Jake said. They want to know if we'll accept their protection. What are you going to tell them? Alex asked. Jake smiled. I'm going to ask them one more question. If they're really here to protect U.S., why are they so afraid of us finding out what they're protecting us from? The room fell silent. Everyone knew that question would end any pretense of friendly relations with the Council. It would be a declare. The morning Jake Morrison was scheduled to give Earth's answer to the Galactic Council. He woke up to find alien ships surrounding the planet. Not the small diplomatic vessels from before, but massive warships that blocked out the sun over major cities. They're not taking any chances, Admiral Sullivan said as they watched the ships position themselves. They know we've been investigating them. Jake nodded grimly. The Council had clearly decided that Earth was becoming too dangerous to handle with gentle lies. Now they were showing their true face. Ambassador Zethkara-S message arrived at dawn, and it was very different from his previous communications. Gone was the calm, reasonable tone. Instead, his voice carried the cold authority of someone who was done pretending to be friendly. Captain Morrison, your species has been conducting unauthorized research in forbidden areas. This is unacceptable. You will cease all investigations immediately and accept our protection, or you will face the consequences that have befallen other uncooperative species. Jake looked at the message for a long moment, then smiled. He's finally being honest with you. What do you mean? Lisa asked. He stopped pretending this is about protection. Now it's about control. A human delegation was scheduled to meet with the full Galactic Council in 2 hours. Jake had prepared carefully for this moment. He had all the evidence they had gathered, all the proof of the Council's lies, and all the documentation of their crimes against other species. "Are you sure about this?" Lisa asked as they prepared to leave. "Once we confront them with this evidence, there's no going back." "There was never any going back," Jake replied. "From the moment we asked what they were protecting us from, this was inevitable." The Council's ship was enormous, bigger than any human city. Jake's team was escorted through corridors that seemed to stretch for miles, past aliens who watched them with fearful eyes. The ship felt more like a prison than a prison. Diplomatic vessel. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. The ceiling was hundreds of feet high, and the 12 council members sat on thrones that towered above the human delegation. Each alien represented a different species, but they all had the same look of cold authority. Council leader Vexthul spoke first. He was larger than the others, with gray skin and eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. "Humans of Earth, you have been summoned to answer for your crimes against galactic order." "Crimes?" Jake asked calmly. "What crimes?" "You have violated the sacred boundaries of forbidden space. You have accessed restricted information. You have questioned the authority of your betters. These are serious offenses." Jake felt a rage building inside him that he had never experienced before. This alien was justifying the murder of entire civilizations as a public service. "And what about the species you've already enslaved?" Jake asked. "The ones living under your protection right now? They're happy," Vexthul said. "They have peace, security, and purpose. They don't have to worry about making difficult decisions or facing dangerous challenges. We handle everything for them." "They're prisoners," Lisa said. "They're safe," Vexthul corrected. "And they will remain safe as long as they follow our guidance." Jake understood now why the aliens had seemed so nervous during their first meetings. The council members weren't evil masterminds. They were middle management in a protection racket that had grown so large they had forgotten its original purpose. "How long has this been going on?" Jake asked. "The protection system has maintained galactic peace for over 10,000 years, Vexthul said proudly. "It is the greatest achievement in the history of civilization." "And who started it? Who decided that the galaxy needed this kind of protection?" For the first time, Vexthul hesitated. The original council, the founders. They saw the chaos that young species could cause and created a system to prevent it. Where are they now? Another hesitation. They ascended to a higher plane of existence. Jake looked at Lisa, who was frowning. Something wasn't right about that answer. "Or maybe," Jake said slowly, "they were eliminated by the next generation of council members who thought they were becoming too powerful." Vex_Thul's face went pale. "That's impossible. The founders were wise and just. They would never They would never what?" Jake pressed. "Challenge the system? Ask too many questions? Become too advanced for their successors to control?" The silence in the chamber was deafening. Jake could see the realization dawning on the faces of several council members. They had become so focused on maintaining the system that they had never questioned who had created it or why. "You're all prisoners too," Jake said quietly. "You've been running a system for so long that you've forgotten you could choose to stop." "Enough!" Vexthul roared. "You will accept our protection immediately, or you will be eliminated. Those are your only choices." "Actually," Jake said, "I have a different question for you." The chamber fell silent again. Jake could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. This was the moment that would determine humanity's fate. "You say you want to protect us from the dangers of the galaxy," Jake said. "But I have to ask, if you're the ones eliminating species that become too advanced, if you're the ones who turn protection systems into prisons, if you're the ones who have been murdering civilizations for thousands of years, Double quotes. Jake paused and looked directly at Vex Thull. What makes you think we need protection from anyone but you? The question hung in the air, like a physical thing. Jake could see the impact it had on the council members. Several of them were staring at Vex_Thull with dawning horror, as if they were seeing their leader clearly for the first time. We are your protectors, Vex_Thull said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, Jake replied firmly. You're the threat. You're the cosmic evil that species need protection from. You're the ancient horror that destroys civilizations. You're the predators that hunt young worlds. That's impossible, one of the other council members said. We maintain order. We keep the peace. You maintain tyranny, Admiral Sullivan said. You keep species weak and afraid so they won't challenge your authority. Jake could see cracks forming in the council's unity. Some members were beginning to question everything they had believed about their mission. For 10,000 years, you've been telling yourselves that you're the good guys, Jake continued. But you're not protectors. You're parasites. You feed off the fear and dependence of other species. Silence. Vex_Thull commanded. You will not question the natural order. The natural order? Jake laughed. You mean the artificial system you created to keep yourselves in power? We maintain stability. You maintain stagnation. You've turned the entire galaxy into a prison where no one is allowed to grow or change or explore. Jake stepped forward, and he was pleased to see Vex_Thull take a step back. But here's the thing about humans, Jake said. We don't like being told what we can't do. We don't like being protected from dangers we haven't seen. And we really don't. Like bullies who hide behind noble words while committing atrocities. You are one species against the entire galaxy, Vex_Thull said desperately. You cannot win. Maybe not, Jake admitted. But we can sure as hell try. Because that's what humans do when faced with impossible odds. We fight anyway. The chamber erupted in chaos as council members began arguing among themselves. Some still supported Vex_Thull, but others were questioning the entire system for the first time in their lives. Jake turned to his team. I think we've heard enough. What now? Lisa asked. Jake smiled grimly. Now we go home and prepare for war. Because the galaxy's greatest threat just showed us its true face, and it looks like a bunch of scared bureaucrats hiding behind 10,000 years of lies. As they left the chamber, Jake could hear the council members still arguing. The perfect unity of the protection system was breaking apart, one uncomfortable question at a time. The revelation was complete. Humanity now knew exactly what they were facing, and more importantly, they knew why they had to fight. The greatest threat to young civilizations wasn't hiding in the darkness between stars. It was sitting on thrones in a council chamber, wearing the mask of a protector while sharpening the blade of a tyrant. A chill ran down his spine. This wasn't a diplomatic meeting anymore. This was a trial, and humanity had already been found guilty. We were investigating the threats you warned us about, Jake said. Isn't that our right as a species facing danger? Vex_Thull's laugh was cold and bitter. Rights? Young species have no rights. They have only the privilege of protection, which can be revoked at any time. The mask had finally come off. Jake looked around the chamber at the 12 council members, and he saw them clearly for the first time. They weren't protectors. They were tyrants who had been ruling through fear for thousands of years. I think it's time for some honesty, Jake said, stepping forward. We know the truth about your protection system. The chamber fell silent. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jake continued. We know that the ancient threats you warn about are actually your own enforcement fleets. We know that species who refuse your protection don't fall to cosmic evils. They're destroyed by your warships. We know that you've been eliminating advanced civilizations for millennia to maintain your power. Vexthal's eyes blazed with anger. You know nothing, human. You are children playing with forces beyond your comprehension. Then explain it.